Supported reading groups provide the necessary time for teachers to work with small groups of students, focusing on specific instructional needs. During the next few minutes, you will see how teachers incorporate key components of effective reading instruction to address the needs of struggling readers. This supported reading lesson begins with fluency practice.
Choose a familiar book that you're going to read, and I'm going to do a running record with Rudy, because we learn to read by reading, right? And the more time, and when you reread your familiar books, then they become easy books for you.
Teacher Dixie Huckabee knows that extra practice rereading books helps struggling readers with fluency. The central part of every supported reading lesson is instructional reading time. The teacher selects an appropriate instructional level text for the group. Before reading, teacher and students preview the book.
We're going to read a book called The Poor Sore Paw. And this is a book about a little dog.
By Joy Kelly.
It is by Joy Kelly. It's a book about a little dog who is crossing a bridge and make a prediction. What do you think is going to happen?
He's going to fall. He's going to fall. His paw's going to hurt.
His paw could get hurt when he fell.
Teacher Dixie Huckabee takes time to point out words that may have challenging meanings.
And wait, hold it on this page, because there's some tricky words on this page. These people are all trying to get across the bridge. And you know what the farmer is? He says there's a traffic jam. Do you know what a traffic jam is?
It's like when all the cars are, it's like packed.
Are all piled up and people cannot get where they're going. And how do the other people feel when there's a traffic jam? How does your mommy feel, Michaela?
She's feeling mad because she has to be at work.
All right. And look at the farmer. How do you think he feels?
He's full mad.
All right. So look on page 8 right here and see if you can find the word traffic. Traffic. You are very fast. Traffic. Now let's read the words that the farmer says on this same line. What a traffic jam.
Just before the students begin to read, the teacher reviews procedures, then sets a purpose for reading.
If you finish before I say stop, if you finish the story, then come back and you can practice reading it, and it can be a familiar book to you. All right, so I want you to read to find out how the animals feel about the poor sore paw and the dog being stuck on the bridge. In a nice mumble voice so I can hear you, but you don't hear each other.
While students read quietly to themselves, the teacher monitors each student. In this next excerpt, notice how she praises the student for reading with expression, then guides the student to recall prior lessons and use decoding strategies already learned.
No dinner for me, said the farmer. He sat down and yelled, boo-hoo, boo-hoo.
I like how you read that. No dinner for me. You sounded just like a mad farmer that wasn't going to get his dinner. Keep reading. Remember, start at the beginning.
Along came Jesse and Sam. What all the...
Jesse and Sam walked over the...
Go back and try it again.
What all the... This...
Over the cow, over the dog.
What were they all doing?
Over the dog. Jesse helped
Look for something you know.
the poor sore
Holly.
Okay, what's this word right there? What's that
the
part?
wood on the bridge.
How?
The
Howling.
Howling.
They said, we went to go home.
While monitoring, the teacher takes notes, recording her observations about what students have learned or if they need additional instruction and practice.
You all did a great job of reading. That was wonderful. Let's tell me what happened in the story. Let's start with April, and we'll go around and we'll kind of like we do in our response journals, tell the sequence of events and what happened in the story.
After reading the text, the group checks their predictions about the story, and the teacher monitors the students' comprehension. Here, we see how the teacher provides scaffolding for a student who needs extra help.
This is one that's tricky for you sometimes. What was the setting in our story?
The setting? I know where that.
Where the dog stopped.
But where was the setting? And,
Where was the setting?
At outside.
and where were they outside? They were
On the bridge.
on the bridge. That's right. Was that a good setting for the story? That's where the problem happened.
The supported reading lesson then moves into phonics, word study, and spelling. As you watch the next example, notice how Mrs. Huckabee takes what she observed during the students' reading and, based on that, provides explicit instruction related to a spelling pattern the class has been learning.
Let me show you what Michaela did. She saw this tricky word. The word was howled. And I told her to look for something that she knew. And she said, I know how. And that's one of the words that we did with our Making Words today. And you know how we were just adding sounds and taking them away out loud before we were looking at the books and reading? If we put an L at the end of how, what is that word? Howl. And look, what's that word? Owl. And if we, how could we make howl into howling?
ING.
All right. I want to show you another one. See if you can read this. A different ending. Howls, like the wolf howls at the moon. And what about, here's a real tricky one. Howled. So you can add different endings.
Throughout the supported reading lesson, the teacher monitors the students' understanding and skills. As she wraps up this lesson, she helps students check their own progress with a quick review of what they've learned.
Try some of these words from the story and some that weren't from the story that have the same sound we were doing with our Making Words. All right, April, you try first. Cow. All right, you're next.
Cow.
All right, here's a hard one. Howl. All right, I'm going to change howl to a different beginning. Growl. April, what if I add this suffix to the word growl? It changes to a new word.
Growl.
And what if I change this one, Michaela, to this suffix?
Growly.
All right.
Like many teachers, Dixie Huckabee relies on her observations during supported reading to help her plan instruction and guide her grouping decisions.
I have a book that I've tabbed all the children's names, and I keep copies of the notes that I take during the lessons. And from there, I go back and plan either class lessons. If I see a skill that's lacking with many members of the class, then I might plan a whole group lesson, or I will plan a lesson for a small group of children, and then for the following week or the following day, gather them and address those skills.